Hello and welcome to Bonkers Economics. Am I bonkers or is it the system we live in? You decide. Today we're asking, where does all the money go? And it's a good question. After all, Britain is the sixth richest economy in the world. And yet we have food banks, we have rising poverty, we have public services which are desperately short of money. We have even a falling life expectancy for the first time in the modern age. So something isn't working. Money is clearly not getting to the right places which are going to improve the quality of our lives in the way that we expect. So what's going on? Where is all the money going? Well, to answer that question, we need to think about our spending, and not in terms probably that we're normally familiar with. So for example, we probably all spend some 10, 15, 20, 30, 40% of our money on food and such like. And yet farming, which is the source of all food production, is less than half of 1% of total spending in the economy. Less than half of 1% of money ends up in the pockets of farmers. If you add in fishing, it's a bit more. It's about 0.6% in total ends up in the pockets of primary food producers. And yet we're spending far, far more than that out of our daily budgets. So it's a bit of a mismatch. The thing about food is that the supply chain is very long. There's all sorts of intermediaries. You've got transport, you've got shops, supermarkets, you've got the people who build those supermarkets, the people who create the lorries that do the transport. There's just an unbelievable amount of stuff that goes into getting the food from the farmer to your shopping basket. And that obviously includes lawyers and accountants and all sorts of people like that. And all of that is being paid for. So an awful lot of our spending on food is actually turns out to be spending on financial services, or spending on transport, or spending on lawyers, or spending on administration, spending on management, spending on all sorts of things that we're not immediately aware of, spending on construction. So we think we're spending it on food, we're actually spending it on all those things. And the way that we can find out what we're spending it on is to look at a thing called gross value added in the economy, which divides the economy up into sectors and says which of those sectors are producing most in terms of money turnover. And that's where the money is going for practical purposes. So rather than get bogged down in all the sectors of the economy, I thought it worth looking at just two at this time. One of those is financial services, and the other one is health and social care. Now, approximately just over 8% of our spending in the economy ends up in the pockets of financial services providers. It goes into financial services, and about 7.5% goes into health and social care, ends up with people who provide health and social care. And you'd think that that's a little bit strange. If we could take some of the money that we're spending on financial services and we could put that into health and social care, then we'd have a much better health service. There'd be no problems around social care. We'd have plenty of support for elderly and unwell people. And we could probably survive with fewer financial services, because after all, do we need 8% of our economy running financial services? So why is it like that in the first place? Well, the answer to that is that financial services are turning over shed loads of money, and they appear to be very productive in money terms, because what they produce is more money. They don't produce money as such, of course, but they accumulate money. They draw money to themselves, they get richer, and that's why they are such a big part of the economy. Financial services are designed to draw money in from other parts of the economy, to accumulate money in the hands of bankers and investors and all sorts of other people who work in that area. Now, the health service doesn't draw money in at all. The health service doesn't accumulate money. The health service appears, on the face of it, to spend money, because money is going out to doctors and nurses and all these people, and they're not accumulating it, they're using it to live. And the hospital or the doctor or the surgery or whatever are providing care, which doesn't have a monetary value. So we don't put a monetary value on that care, we're not accumulating it in the same way, and we can't say, look, we accumulated shed loads of good health and care and all the rest of it, and that's a really good thing, because it looks like we're just spending money on those things. So for so long as we measure the money we're accumulating and consider that to be a good thing, and we don't measure the benefit of the healthcare that is being provided in itself, then we're always going to favour, as a government, we're going to favour financial services. We're going to say we put more energy into financial services, that will create more money turnover, appear to make the economy bigger and richer. And if we can put less money, therefore, into the health service, we will save money in our budget. Now, of course, the government can't put less money into the health service. That would be a problem politically, but it can put as little more money in as it can get away with, because it doesn't want to put money into something which is not generating more money activity and accumulating more money for the people who work there. So it's as simple as that. We have to ask ourselves why money ends up in certain places. It ends up in certain places because it appears to be productive, because it appears to allow people to accumulate more money. It's not ending up in the places where we are accumulating wealth which does not have a money value, such as health, education, and that sort of thing. Because nobody's saying, hey, if we have better health, we are better off. We are richer. No one's saying that. No one ever thought to say, how much have we benefited from it? How much does it improve the quality of our lives? And then add that on as well and say, look, that's a benefit that we really appreciate and we'd be lost without it. So let's value that benefit, not just as the cost of doing the job. Let's value that benefit also as the value of the benefit on top of the cost of doing the job, which is exactly what they do with financial services. They say, look, financial services is turning over this amount of money and accumulating this amount of money. So we're putting this amount in, and it then turns that money into more because it's dragging money from elsewhere in the economy, not because it's making more money. And that appears to be a good thing. So it's all about the way we measure. And we're going to come back to this time and time again in bonkers economics. If we measure money turnover rather than real wealth production, then we're always going to end up with the wrong answer, fundamentally. So where does all the money go? Well, in relation to financial services and health, I'm afraid the money all goes into financial services and not enough money goes into health. And it would be easy enough to reverse that process. Now, obviously, if you take money out of financial services, the government creates policies which produces less of an incentive for money to go into financial services and more of an incentive for money to go into health, then that's going to have consequences. Fewer people will work in financial services, of course. And it's true that people who work currently in financial services are not doctors, and you can't just move them out of there and put them there. But over time, people going to university will say, actually, I'd rather be a doctor than a banker. Or people leaving university with good degrees in subjects like engineering would not say, I'd rather be a financial services engineer. I'd rather go and be an engineer who makes medical equipment, for example, because that would be more useful and more constructive. If we made that a more attractive option by putting the money into medicine and not into financial services, then we would find that that's where the people go to. And all the train of people who work in financial services who are not bankers and highly qualified people, but are people who are doing effectively service activities in financial services. Well, they could be doing service activities in the health service, in social care, in all sorts of other areas, in education comes to that, where we would see real value being created. So yes, it has consequences, but it's not a zero-sum game. You end up taking activity out of an area which is not ultimately productive and putting it into an area which is productive, such as health or education or something of that sort. And you can do that by measuring the value of what is coming out of health and education and saying that's a good thing, rather than measuring the money that's being accumulated in financial services and saying that's a good thing. So yes, it's a question of what we want. Like all spending, it's a question of what we want. Do we want to spend our money on financial services, or do we want to spend our money on health, social care, and education? It's actually a choice we can make. It's a choice the government's making, and it's making the wrong choice, and it's been doing it for decades. And that's something that can change. Okay, so that's that aspect of the economy. There'll be plenty more on Bonkers Economics coming up in the next few weeks. Do subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.